and welcome to today's joint podcast for Whole Soul Mastery and Whole Soul School and Foundation. I'm Marie Mohler, and I'm an author, an intuitive, and a messenger of living a rich, inspired, authentic, and abundant life as divine creative heroes and heroines. And I'm here today with Shira Friedman. We're going to be talking about midwife of the soul and highly sensitive people as our topic today. And I want to welcome you, Shira, to this conversation. I'm so grateful that you can join me, and I can't wait to talk about what your life's work and your passion is. So thank you. Welcome.
Thank you, Marie. So good to see you. So,
Yes.
yeah, any questions? And I just put this out here just in case, because this is my only hardback cover of the book, but
Yes.
it's
So
just
you've
kind of
written this
amazing.
book, you published it this year, Midwife of the Soul, and it's quite, you describe it as an autobiographical teaching memoir of in which you give a guided tour into the mind, heart, and soul of highly sensitive people. And I'd love for you just to begin by sharing a little bit about you and your journey of self-discovery that led you to understanding yourself as a midwife of the soul through your own journey, your own traumas, your own path to self discovery in this way, and how you help others. But just tell us a little bit about you and how this, came to be.
Okay, well, first of all, I think I was born highly sensitive. It wasn't a result of trauma, although trauma happened. It was just being so like I felt everything. All five senses were like always buzzing, and it was hard to discern like, okay, what is really happening to me or to anybody else outside of me, and what does it mean? And so I learned early on to, because of my family's culture and philosophy of parenting, was children should be seen and not heard. So I made myself scarce and I escaped to the garden outside, did whatever I could. But there was always this seed of like a very deep connection with spirit and with source. I didn't know what to call those things at that time when I was a child. But I do, a major turning point occurred in that spiritual aspect when I was at 7 years old and had a dream that a being, actually, I was in a classroom setting and the teacher was standing in front of me, and then behind was the blackboard, and the being writes Uriel,
Oh,
Uriel, the angel Uriel, right? But I didn't know. I had no clue what that meant. I thought, what is this, a foreign word? And at 7, I had no connection, no ever been taught anything about angels, didn't know what an archangel was, etc. And I asked my mom, she didn't know either. So I guess it was very profound only in retrospect, because well, I just said, okay, well, I'll put that on the shelf because I don't know. And so life went on, and I did have a very also, I would call it a near-death experience at age 12 when I was crossing a street at a busy intersection. And to back up a little bit, a 12-year-old normally could cross the street without help, but I lived in villages up to that time of age 12. I lived in the village of Mount View, which is a beach community in North Kingstown, Rhode Island. And then we moved when I was 7, and we moved from there to the village of Rehoboth, Massachusetts. And that was also very, very secluded, and there were woods and streams and just lovely. For me, I just loved it. That you didn't see a car pass on the street where I lived, hardly ever. I guess the mailman, but so so moving, there was my parents were, I didn't know, but they were divorcing. So we moved from there when I was 12 to North Providence, Rhode Island. And North Providence is a busy, I guess, I don't know if I call it the inner city, but parts of it are like that. And here we are on this main street with no light, no crosswalk, and it rattled me. And that was where my true the inner part of my sensitivity just came to be highlighted. Like, okay, this is who I am, but I'm not sure. Other people aren't like this. Nobody else is scared to cross the street. So I gotta just, have just work on this and just be brave. And I wanted to take piano lessons. I love music, and piano was one of my just little hobby things. I could hear music and just play by ear, but I wanted to get some formal education. And knowing that there was a music studio that gave piano lessons across the street, I'd asked my mom and if she could if that was something, could I have lessons? And she said, well, and she was very New England. So a lot of things came out of her mouth that were different. Like, she would just tell me if I was singing, she's very like professional, perfectionist standards. She said, you can't carry a tune in a bucket. So, okay, mom. So let me play piano. So anyway, she said, no, you're too old. That's like, I didn't, I believed her. Okay, 12 is too old. But that's in terms of a professional. I didn't, I just wanted to do it for, to try to get through, have something that was nurturing and grounding for me with the sensitivity I had. And she said basically no. So I figured out a way with babysitting that I saved my money and I was going to pay for my own lessons. And lo and behold, the studio was owned and operated by a couple with two children who wanted a babysitter. So there I was. And so I saved all that money, squirreled it away, and got to sign up for piano lessons. And so one sunny afternoon in the spring, April of 1964, I went across the street, took my piano lesson, got back, and it was just stood on the sidewalk. There's no crosswalk to guide or light or stop sign or anything. So I had to be very careful. And I stepped, to make my approach so that the incoming cars maybe would stop. Well, a driver of a sports car downshifted, came to a full stop. So I knew it was okay to cross because he's waving me to come on, come across. So before my feet can hit the pavement or the sidewalk on the other side in front of my house, he popped the clutch out of gear accidentally. Struck my hip. I went flying into the air. Literally, I had a conscious moment like do something. You're going to fall face first. Protect yourself. Well, there wasn't time to integrate that information. So basically, I flew in the air, face planted on a concrete sidewalk, face first, was rushed to the hospital, spent 2 weeks there with a wired jaw shut, five of the upper smiling teeth obliterated out into the atmosphere, and a broken hip, nose, jaw. It was quite something. And and so that began the real, true trauma that lasted up until now, literally. But to try to get past all that, I still had this calling, this deep, deep desire. It came out after, 10 years from 12 to 22 of having not a normal social life, not want to sleep over at anyone's house, a friend or girlfriend. Because why? Because I had a removable partial for my front teeth, and that was like so uncool. So I just became like a hermit, and I don't know if the woods, it just reminds me of like, oh, that's protection. Nobody sees me. I'm invisible. But I had to get through that. I had to get past all that. But when I was 22, there was a dental a procedure that could give me a permanent solution, a permanent bridge. So that was like, because I prayed every night, like God would say, can you could just do a miracle, like put little root buds in there so I could, because there weren't implants in those days. So I was thinking of ways that, how could this happen? So, but I was so happy when I had the bridge because it was like the next best thing to having natural teeth and didn't have to take them out at night. And I could just go and do all the things that I was felt suppressed, like, to travel or to join the Peace Corps or something. I just, all those things were like, no, this isn't going to work for you. Well, so a little bit later, when I was about 24, I had another one of those dreams that are very profound, like the one I had when I was 7. And it was about actually, I saw the property, the house, and where it was. And at the time, I was living in Texas, which, trees are very small, like a shrub, mesquite bush, not like West Texas, of course, like East Texas, different. But I saw that and thought, where is this? I've never seen this before, like these huge, big mother trees. And the house was a 2-story house. And women were coming to me asking help to give birth at home and looking to me as a midwife to actually physically help deliver the babies. And I thought, well, okay, but I'm not certified. But even if I was, why? Why do you not want to give birth in the hospital? And this is in 1976, right? So I give away my age. But I thought, well, I got to know what's the reason. And it wasn't a long dream. Obviously, the imaging was very, very vivid, but I didn't. But when they're coming and asking, I said, "Can you tell me why?" And they said, and this is probably going to look like conspiracy theory or whatever, but is it because we don't want our newborns to be chipped at birth? And I'm like, what? Chipped? What does that mean? And I sit with that, pondered that for probably weeks, months, but I thought, oh, I don't know what that means. How is something chipped? This was before I ever learned the word microchip. So
Wow.
clearly it was, what do you call it? Precognitive or something. I
Prescient.
mean, what'd you
Prescient.
say?
Prescient.
Prescient, yes. So I thought, well, I cannot just figure that puzzle out, but I do feel that calling. I do feel like I would love to help women. I want that. This is me. I want to do this, and I wanted to become a nurse. I started out as a certified nursing assistant, went from there to licensed practical nurse, and then through the time, so I'm actually raising a family, having my own babies. So I'm like had one at home. And then I thought, well, there's a lot ways, like how can I be more helpful, not just the delivering part. So I became a birth doula, a postpartum doula, and a licensed massage and bodywork therapist because I saw the energy healing benefits of providing a pain-free or at least more easily manageable labor for clients or for people that it would come. So all those things were my stepping stones on this path. Well, then I got into the RN program and I thought, well, this is just, I'm going to do this, but I know I have to get more education. I know I have to take the prerequisites, all the things. But let me just start here because I cannot do it all at once. I was working full time. I had children to raise. I homeschooled them. It was like a lot. So I thought it's okay if it takes time. I'm just this is something I have to figure out this calling. Is it a vocational calling or is it something else? So lo and behold, I finished the 2-year nursing RN ADN program, associate degree nursing, and I It was very, mm, I wanted to say military, like, militant, like the culture then was like incivility in nursing, and you do it the way we say, you don't go outside the box. And I guess what they didn't like is that, well, I'm going to give away in the book because it's too much detail. But I I didn't I didn't get my pinning because it was 6 weeks to the end of the semester to graduation. And I was um, just prevented in every way possible. And I often I was so upset. I was just like, oh, this does not make sense. Why would I have this calling and not be able to fulfill it? It's not like I couldn't do the work. I had a good GPA. I attended clinicals. I just, even when I was sick, I didn't call out. Just, I mean, didn't matter. So what I got from that is that there's something else. There's not, I don't know what that is exactly, but I had already gone to grad school. So I had already two master's degrees, and that's another story. But so I went on a nursing forum online and I said, what would tell me, I'd like some feedback. What would you do if you were right now just a licensed practical nurse with two graduate level degrees, one in education, one in school psychology? What would you do? And they said, well, go into psych nursing if you're going to stay in nursing, or just go in private practice and become a psychotherapist. I'm like, huh, I hadn't thought about that. So I did. I did that. And in a whole new world, like, okay, this is me, one on one. The sensitive inside of me doesn't need to feel overwhelmed in a classroom because I was also an adjunct professor. And, it was hard for me. And again, a lot of that is my trauma because it didn't mean I couldn't. It just meant that I felt just broken spirited about what had happened to me and all of the things were surrounding that trauma when I was 12 years old. So um, I just went, I just said, okay, then I'm going to do this. I'm going to apply. This would be now my third master's degree as a Master of Science in Clinical Counseling. And every time it's like I was so excited about it. I loved it. I loved learning. I loved the interaction with colleagues. I loved everything about it. And when it came to the end of the program, and we have to give a presentation of what we are looking for, what kind of therapist do we want to be, and why, and I thought, oh, okay. But this thing about psychotherapy, midwifing the soul, that's what it is. That's what being a psychotherapist is looks like. Maybe not for everyone, there are different kinds of psychotherapy, but for me, it resonated. I said, this is it. This is my path. How can I present this? And I did it. I presented it and I said, this is what I see. I see myself helping. It's a kind of a spiritual birthing. And when a person who's gone through trauma or they've had difficult challenges in their lives, and they're able to find, instead of the trauma, transmute the trauma into triumph, but even more so, find that divinity within. That spark of soul divinity is like a birth. We don't recognize it enough, not in ourselves and often not in each other. So to be able to recognize it and help my clients to recognize it has been transformational for them, but also for me because I keep coming back to that dream. Okay, this was there. I don't know what the chip thing is all about, but this is real. And I'm going to go with it. And I'm going to be grateful for my sensitivity, the fact that that intuition is always fully operational. It's fully allowing I mean, sometimes there's like a conversation in my, it's almost like downloads that I get the exact things to say. The words come out and it's my heart feeling what needs to feel, but the words aren't mine. The words are there, almost like a divine intercept, you know? I know you know this.
I do.
So,
Wow. Well, let me just say your story and your life and the way you express it so beautifully. One of the first things I'm feeling that I think our listeners can resonate with, and I'm sure the people you work with, is that life isn't linear. Downloads aren't linear. Trauma and the emotional trauma isn't linear. We're born into this realm, and we've taught again and again. They want us as we line up for classes in kindergarten, and we line up to take our tests, and we line up to do this, and all this lining up, this linear living. It's really
mhm,
so much of the illusion. And to have someone who can express what it's like to be connected to the allness, to be connected to URIEL in a dream, to be connected and
mhm,
being given this insights that didn't seem to have any application in your life in the 70s when you're hearing about maybe midwifing or birthing or what all that was, but then not wanting to be chipped and that not being a concept really on the planet yet, right? So I just
mhm,
marvel when anyone attempts to express and live and embody a non-linear life, right? A soul-informed life. And I feel like that's what you have been called in many ways to bring forth, to help birth in other people, birthing it in yourself first. And that's really powerful, for just as a reminder to anybody listening, is you're a living expression how life is not linear, and how our soul wants to birth and be so much more, and be so much more present in our lives, and not fitting into the cubicles of the algorithms and the mathematical equations we've been shown that that's what our life on this planet is supposed to be. We are not that. We are that spark that's wanting to get our attention, that wants to burst forth. And I'm gonna toss it back to you to share a little bit more. But it's so amazing when people get a download, or maybe they're not even honoring a download, but a door closes, right? Like you're in your program and you can't graduate with your nursing degree. You're 6 weeks away, and there's all these obstacles in your way, but that wasn't your path. It doesn't always mean that it's not somebody's path if there's an obstacle. But we are messengers of listening within when something's not aligning, when something's not unfolding in a kind of flowful way. And I have that all the time in my life to this day. Right now, I experience this where these doors are not opening. And I'm not necessarily, sometimes another door is opening at the same time, and sometimes another door is not opening. And we have to be
mhm,
cradled in that space of trustful grace where we don't know what door is going to open, but we can definitely acknowledge to ourselves that these are not opening. And I love listening to you. Just if they could capture in an animation of how you had to flow and twirl and spin and just kind of be on your knees and surrender, or whatever it was for you. There's such beauty in that souls on the path, right, of midwifing their soul. In my language, it might be, to discover the divine creative hero within. However, we describe that, it's a journey of that discovery, but we see it in each other. Yeah, I recognize it in you, and you see it in me. And not everybody's looking for necessarily messages like we bring forth, because some people just feel safer in the A plus B equals C, right? Some people want to live in that space. But for people
mhm.
who are seeking more, for people who have traumas that, inform their path and the healing and what the gifts they're meant to bring through, I feel like you're just such a beautiful expression and messenger of that, and how that all came forward as the midwife of the soul, right? And your living expression of the way you've journeyed with. It takes so much trust. We have to be willing to be in the messiness of our lives where things, I can't imagine what it was like when your peers in the nursing program were graduating and you weren't. Like, right? That's something that happens in a linear life where people are probably saying, oh, Shira, she didn't graduate. Where you were actually being birthed into something so beautifully aligned for your gifts through time, but you didn't know it in precisely that moment. You had to feel the messiness of that. You had to feel whether it was confusion or I don't understand what's happening. How can a person that's taken this much training and done everything right in that linear life and it not manifest for you in the way that it did for your peers? So, but the beauty of living a soul led life is we don't answer to the linear living. We don't answer to the prescribed, this is how it should be. We listen for what is right and aligned inside. And if we keep listening, there's so much expansion that's in there, and we make a much bigger impact when we're living the life we came to live. And I'm hearing you've been in discovery of that your whole life, and how beautiful, because of all the experiences you had, people can be feeling lost or confused or out of sync with the world or not understanding their place in it or their place in their very own lives. And I would imagine the people that find their way to you are so grateful because you create a safe space for them to discover what it is that wants to emerge. What is it that wants to emerge from their voice, their expression? And the ways in which you had this incredible resilience, even with your mom, who's like, you're too old, you found a way because you kept listening. You kept listening for how the music wanted to express, and you found a way, right? A way is always made for the seeker. And what I hope people hear in our conversations today is that there is a way for all of us forward that's aligned in so many beautiful ways just for them. But you have to be willing to be a listener. You have to let it be messy. I was talking about this before we got on camera, but Dr. Terry Cole Whitaker podcasted with me many times, and she has a video, and I know she talked about it with me as well, but I think the title was Embrace Your Inner Weird, or embrace being different.
Embrace your neurodivergence is what
Embrace
I
your
say.
neurodivergence. There it is, right? And so
Mhm.
maybe we want to segue into you talked about being a highly sensitive person and your childhood and how that felt growing up, and the world can be very overwhelming. I also am a pretty sensitive soul, right? I identify with that as well. How would you like what really is a highly sensitive person? Is there a way to define or describe that?
Yes, it is. And I will kind of borrow from, just for the sake of brevity, from Dr. Elaine Aron, who started, actually pioneered the research back in the 80s. So there are others besides her, but she's just the one that I found and have all of her books and actually have my name on her website, like along with others who do are therapists and are HSPs themselves and do understand how to help HSPs navigate in the world. So, what she does is she has an acronym, DOES. So the D is like deeply processing information, whether that's intellectual or emotional or ordinary conversation or reading an article or researching something. They deeply process. They really want to drill down to the truth. So that's the D. The O, easily overwhelmed by their own five senses. Some are not all five. They could just be certain, like, ouch, that hurts in my ears, this traffic noise, or whatever. It's just knowing that that happens to you as overwhelmed by your own five sensory perceptions. Okay, the E is for like the emotional empathy, being an empath and all that entails, because you feel what other people feel. Really, you can actually feel it mirroring at the same time you're talking to somebody, or that I am anyway. So that empathic side. Um, and then the S is for subtleties, like picking up on subtle details that it could be in the environment, it could be about a person in front of you, what little things you notice and or their behavior or their body language, and you notice every little thing. And even in an environment, if something doesn't feel right, or you have a guest in your home and you don't know if the lighting or that you want to do everything to create that sense of comfort or safety, if you will. But it's those details, that matter so much to HSPs that other people can just overlook and be fine. I've never understood how somebody could not see that somebody else was uncomfortable. I don't, I, but, but for me, it's like up, I don't know. Also frequency, subtle detection of frequency. Like you can sense the frequency somebody else is on. You could look and say, "Oh, I know that this is heavy. They're depressed about something," or I might be able to help, but I have to watch it too. The empath in me needs boundaries because if I don't have them, I'm going to be trying to give from an empty cup because I would be drained. So that's another thing. So that's a whole other issue of like what to do about this HSP personality temperament.
Yes,
I hope that
that's a
answers
beautiful
it.
description, and it brought it to life in a way. I've heard about highly sensitive people. I think I might even have the book by the teacher you described. And we find pieces of ourselves in our journeys, in the stories of others, right? In the research and the teachings of others. And
Mhm.
what's so important is that people don't feel alone, right? I would imagine, like
Yes.
in your journey, there's a loneliness of I might be the only one feeling this way, or I think sometimes it's the opposite that we assume that everybody's as sensitive. We think they're just as sensitive as we are sometimes. And I had to have in my 20s, my partner in a series of conversations having to say, nobody else is picking up on the things that you're picking up on. We're not seeing it the same way you're seeing it. And I thought, I mean, it's just as clear as the sky is blue to me. But to hear somebody consistently have to show me nobody else is able to perceive at the level that you're perceiving. And so I think that it was challenging to hear that, but it was also in some way healing. And I definitely grew through that experience because it also, I felt like people were way more insensitive because I thought they were seeing the details in the frequencies, the vibrations, the truth in the conversations that I was perceiving that they were completely oblivious of. And I thought they were very insensitive or even mean sometimes. And it took me
Yes.
realizing they aren't seeing, they aren't able to perceive at the level that I'm perceiving. That was a big aha moment for me to really understand that. And so grateful for the work and the language of the highly sensitive person, which is like it's empathy is part of that, right? The empathy is part of the highly sensitive person, but it's not the whole picture. There's other facets to understand too. And I'm sure you bring that into the work that you do and also how you share your story and midwifing of the soul of like, it is a rebirth. I mean, it's interesting that we're having this conversation at the time I often reference, I think we're in an ascension decade. I mean, it's going to go on for quite some time, but the real pivot of the planet is happening, it feels to me, between 2020 and 2030. And we're at the midpoint still in 2025 of that ascension decade. So there is this sense of the earth is rebirthing herself, right? The midwife of Gaia, right? And
The
then and
midwife of the soil.
of the soil. Yeah. Oh, that is so beautiful, right? The
That'll
mid,
be a sequel.
right? A must. Um,
Yeah.
and so, and also the midwife of our own souls along with that, because somebody over the years was saying that we needed to become frequency specific to the new earth. We are changing along with that soil. We are birthing
Absolutely.
ourselves along with the earth's birth. And it's so this is another thing I wanted to talk with you about because I have also said over the years that language can incarcerate us, and language can liberate us, right? It's the use of our words, how we're creating our lives with the sounds and the words and the thoughts that we think and the feelings we have. But if we take just words deeper and stories, our stories can incarcerate us and they can liberate us. And it must be all part of the work that you do as the midwife of the soul, as this calling that you've had your whole life. And being able to have people show up, with that first contact of reaching out to you. They find you in their path and they're looking to discover how they can liberate themselves from whatever it is that they're entangled in or incarcerated within. It could be their own trauma. Oftentimes it's their own trauma and it's the stories that they're reliving and they don't know how to move through those stories to create a new chapter, a new life, a birthing of themselves on a whole new level. So I wanted to just talk about that because I think people get attached to their stories and
Yes, the
and I
energy.
and I think this
Mhm.
birthing of the midwife of the soul, you are sharing this autobiographical teaching memoir of, yes, the things you've been through, but when stories are used well, when they are an expansion, right? It's not to incarcerate people further. You're showing people a pathway where they can walk through their story and into a new beginning, right? Or through their story into an expanded version of themselves. And so, yeah, yeah, maybe you want to talk about, what are some of the most precious gifts that you found in your story that helped you to keep going? As a highly sensitive person, you are still dealing with the trauma of your childhood and, some doors opening, some doors closing, and you've always been meandering and finding your way in the flow. But what are some of the nuggets maybe in your story, maybe that are in your book too? I'm sure there's more stories and gems in there of how you found a way to keep going. Were there more dreams? Were there more guidances?
Yeah,
Like where did that come from inside you?
often, often there were dreams. Throughout the book, there's dreams, and there's some of my own little poetry works or things that I thought would help me help others. And it kind of goes in that priority. And also understanding about, we all know Nikola Tesla and what he said about the energy. If you want to understand energy, think in terms of vibrational frequency. And I'm like, yeah, that's it. How do I present that? This is what matters. My own frequency. If I cannot raise it up, then how can I transmute anybody, my own whatever shadow goes around, and how can I help somebody else? How can I put that in a meaningful context for others, especially my clients that I'm working with, because some of them have never heard that. Well, then there was a little nugget, since you mentioned that, I never knew. I, Nikola Tesla and I have the same birthday, July 10th. Who knew? It's another thing like Uriel. I didn't know. And I was so stoked, whatever, like so
Blown
excited
away,
to
I'm
know that.
sure.
I
Yeah.
said, okay, thank you. Thank you so much. All right. So some of that thought and me being, always wanting curious and experiment. I mean, even in the kitchen, man, I have got to like take a recipe and I'm owning that one. I'm doing something different here. So I had it, the raw material of understanding the same thing, even though I don't have a degree in physics, although believe me, if I had time in my life, I would be doing that now because of the stuff, the cosmic influences and the planetary influences and the sun doing its thing in this cycle because the sun is raining down this plasma and it is bringing us to increasing our consciousness. We are raising our frequency just from the energy of the sun. If we can fathom it, if we don't get distracted by other things, or if we don't get involve fear, like, oh, the sun's bad, let me not go near the sun. Uh, uh, so, so basically, I feel like that this midwifery of the soul is like I'm trying to understand and translate it in a more practical way to my
Right.
clients. And some of them start to get it, but it takes a while. If I use that verbiage of vibrational frequency, like, ugh, it's woo woo. And I have to be a clinician at the same time.
Right. Right.
So I have to, yeah, I have to straddle that. And it's hard to not be able to bring that in. And so I want to understand more of the science. And I really do wish I was an astrophysicist or
There's still time. There's still
I
time.
know, I know. I thought about that. I thought maybe
Right.
that's why I'm in Rhode Island. I can go back to school easy.
Yeah.
Oh
Well,
my gosh.
it's beautiful. And just like we've been entrained to the noise, we've gotten very accustomed to the smog and the pollution or, all the lower frequencies of the density of this planet. It just becomes what is normal, right? And what's
Yeah.
so beautiful is that when people spend time with you, right? If people spend time in the messages that I share and people who are bringing through messages like these, that there are other ways, right? That I love how you're talking about the sun and people who may just kind of have their heads down and just moving through life, right? Just the way a lot of people in the world are just getting through. They're just passing time. They're just passing through time, right? And not seeing
Mhm.
the full spectrum color that life can be, the full spectrum flavors that life can be, which the highly sensitive person, the empathic people, but especially the highly sensitive souls, we're wired to notice all those things, but we're also feeling all the noise of the densities of this world. So I feel like what you're saying is a message for people who are just moving through life, just not fully ready to open their heart centers to more, but still can learn a lot spending a weekend with you in a retreat or having, those reminders of spending time in nature and just turning our devices off for some time and, drinking in that plasma, those light codes, those frequencies. That's a message for all of us, and people can let that in at the level that they're comfortable, right? But especially
Mhm.
for the highly sensitive people, there's something so beautiful. Again, that feeling of like, I am not alone. There are others like me. I can only imagine what it was like in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, feeling this, knowing this. But we didn't have the internet. It wasn't so widely available. There were these tiny little sections in the bookstores of like maybe some new age things. And you'd have to look very specifically for a few titles because there wasn't a whole lot there. But you have been living and embodying and sharing this. And what I love when I'm listening to you is how in every moment that you were learning it for yourself, you're also feeling it and wanting to express it so you can help others, right? There's something
It's
so
always
beautiful in that.
Thank you. Really, thank you, Marie, because it's like I had to have two outcomes, kind of like feeding two birds with one slice of bread,
Mm,
not nourishing myself, but with the outcome of I have this to offer. Will this help you? No, I didn't eat all the bread. Here, I want you to share it with me. So,
right. It's so for me, just you saying that, it's so Lemurian. It's such a Lemurian frequency to me. I don't know if you resonate with that or not, but that's how they lived. They shared. It was like shared knowledge. It was there's more than enough for all of us, and we wanted if we had a beautiful idea or art or whatever, that's the feeling of I want to share it. I want to share it, right? And that's when our cups are full, right? And even on the journey to filling our own cups, right? Midwifing the soul. We want to share that in the world. And that's how I feel. That's why I create the music I do and the messages that I do.
mhm.
When I
Oh,
discover a nugget of something that inspires me, I want to share it with other people. And it may not light everybody up from the inside out, but those who are ready to be lit up from whatever those messages are, I share them just as you are sharing your wisdom. I wanted to go back to also, the traumas and the lesson learning that we go through, and when life is messy, and when echoes of previous traumas come back to find us, because they do until we heal and transcend, like you were saying, transcend it and to move through it. it forms just like that, that can become composted soil for the new
Mhm.
chapters, right? There's nothing is wasted in a divine creation. Everything, there's something in it for us, including the happy times and the beautiful, like where we feel so aligned with what we're doing, or we have a discovery, we're seeking some truth and we find a nugget, or we find a book like yours, somebody who's been seeking your work is like, oh, and we're so happy. And then there's moments where things are not making sense. We've got all these influences. There's so much flushing to the surface right now where, really, I think the old paradigm and the control mechanisms and the enslavement programs and all of that are being dematerialized, or at the very least, mulched and composted to be rich soil for the new age, the new world we're all moving into. And for some people listening to a video like this, I've certainly learned this lesson myself. It's not necessarily that we're going to blink and there's a whole new world tomorrow. It's happening inside us right now. We are composting ourselves, right? We are midwifing ourselves. And so there's something so beautiful in the gifts you have to be somebody who has been on the path always to help people in this time. And now at this critical time, I can't imagine a more poignant time where we need midwives of the soul, right? Like you. Hopefully you will, maybe there'll be an opportunity to teach the teachers, right? You could be a teacher of teachers of this wisdom, or at least model it for others, because there's a lot of people who haven't stirred awake yet, right? They're not even aware that this is something that the humanity is going through as a collective. And there's just something so beautiful to the people who've dedicated their lives to this, to be here now, to be a healer and a helper and a teacher and a messenger of this. For those that are ready and for those that still are yet to come. And I feel that, like, your work is in the layers of the people who be awakening in their own time. Yeah.
Absolutely. Was there a question in that? So I
Well,
can
I think
respond, but
one of the questions I have emerging is, I don't know if I'm articulating it well, but I know some people are feeling like the sweet spot. I'll quote from Terry again, that she talked about prosperity is moving forward with enthusiasm. That was her
Mhm.
definition of what prosperity is moving forward with enthusiasm. And when you're enthusiastic, there's this feeling of flow and synergy and alignment, and we're in agreement with what we're doing in the universe. Is, God's creation and all our guides are saying, yes, yes, right? There's this beautiful, sweet space, and that's something to celebrate and continue to talk about, maybe in another podcast also, because there's different facets to this conversation today. But I also really want to speak to the people who are squeezed, who are overwhelmed, who are struggling, who have worked in a job for 30 years, 10 years, whatever, 6 months, and it's not aligned. They've lost their job. Things are changing. Their whole industry is closing out. Something is very different than how change is happening now on the planet than how it's happened before. And I kind of wanted to speak to, like, how do people find solace and comfort and grace during the time of these ascension squeezes? And I would imagine that's woven in and through some of the work that you do in midwifing the soul, and particularly in ascension times, because it's a grand rebirth of ourselves. So much is getting
Yeah.
mulched, composted, transmuted. How are they finding that solace? You know, I don't know if you could speak just from the work that you do and how you meet people where they are, sensitive souls looking to find the deeper spark in the dark,
By
in the dark.
yeah, absolutely in the dark. And going within is the main thing. And when I say that, that's like almost like a catchphrase, but it's recognizing that if you want to hear the voice of your soul, if you want to be in alignment with what your soul came here to do, not what your ego came here to do, because that ego trips us up all the time we are constantly enslaved unless we say no. Okay, ego, you're good. You're good for like, survival of the species and taking care of, like threats and whatever. But the soul needs to, it's a whisper. So we need to learn to be in tune to that whisper. What does the soul really need from this experience as a human? It's in this human body for a reason. And
Mm.
so to kind of learn how to do that, for some people, oh yes, meditate, but then that freaks them out because either they have ADHD and they can't sit still or it's something. So I tell them, okay, all of life, there's a rhythm. If you are in your everyday world, let's suppose like you're home and it's the laundry's done and you have to fold it. Take that folding of the laundry and turn it into a
Mm.
meditation. It's a moving meditation. You don't have to sit still and stare at your navel. You can do these things, and as you're doing them, becomes a practice. And then believe it's like then you widen that space. You're a little bit detached from the triggers. Not that they don't happen. They do. We're all human. But we have learned, we can teach ourselves how to widen the space between the stimulus and the response.
Mm.
That's another one
No,
quote
that's
from
so, that's,
Dr. Viktor Frankl, another. But yeah, because we, if we don't do that, we're constantly always on the edge, always ready to knee jerk,
right,
always the ego comes and intervenes between us and the soul. And we've got to find a way. So that's one way. That's a certain kind of meditation. So there's probably a lot of other more nuanced things depending on each individual client that they're facing. But
right.
a lot of it, I bring in all of like the Buddhist philosophy of letting go and surrendering, just being present now, and the meditation. And I mean, I don't know if it's because of my dad bringing in being Jewish, my grandmother on my dad's side, you know born in Jewish from in Brooklyn, New York, and my mom being a Christian until she did realize like, oh, what? Her mother is actually one of the secret Jews from Calabria, Italy. But anyway, because of all of this exposure, I have a kind of a spiritual DNA.
Mm.
And in that, whatever that is, in that entity of spiritual DNA, I am like pan everything. The Christian, the Jewish, the Buddhist, the Hindu, the Islam, the Muslim, the Native American, all of it, all of it. I find ways that it connects with whoever my client is, and sometimes with me. I like to be a shaman in the Native American
Right, right,
tradition.
right.
And
It,
yeah, so
it's beautiful. And I think there's also this, I don't know if this is your language, but it's like this allowing, there's this like giving ourselves permission to explore and remember, I would say the knowing that we already know, like we are eternal, infinite soul beings that have learned and lived so many lifetimes. We're so many layers of ourselves. But the absolute truth of who we are as that divine spark is always awaiting our rediscovery. Always. And all the trauma and the language and the experiences and the circumstances and the compression and the stress and the overwhelm, we think that that defines us because the world around us is trying to mirror to us that that defines us. But it
mm,
doesn't. And when you have that spiritual DNA that you're talking about, there's this knowing beyond time and space. And that's where the conscious laundry folding, and that's where the
mhm.
conscious dishwashing, and that's what I would
Yeah,
talk about, the conscious breathing, that space between the stimulus and the response. That's where we take that pause. And when you breathe and you fold laundry in that conscious breathing way, you step outside of linear time where all those details were just swirling around you and inside you, and you access the infinite inside you. And I hear that
yeah.
you make space for people to feel that. You make space for people to tap into that. Yeah.
Right. If there's a way to distill it, to say life is meant to be an art form,
Mhm.
to do the best you can to elevate it into an art form, even the messy parts. What can be learned? What can you take away? The shadow parts. Okay, yeah, they're there. You need shadow in art, right? In photography and certain like contrast. So all of it, there's not, like you said, nothing is wasted.
Nothing
And
is
this is
wasted.
the
And for
divine
people to
calling.
yeah, the divine art and the divine calling, that the beautiful thing is if people can start to see that much bigger picture of themselves, then we don't get trapped or stuck or tangled in the details that some people may not be able to, like, I never got over that. They could say a phrase like that. I never got over that. Or, that's one of my biggest traumas in my life. And if people, as you transmute that, it isn't any longer the biggest trauma in your life. It can be the time in your life where you showed yourself where your fears are, right? And then, as you know, I'm even in these last few years going through some of that, of like things that really scare me, that shut down my voice as a child. I'm having many opportunities, certainly since I've been making these videos, but many opportunities to open that up again, open up my voice, open up that creative expression, right? And I feel the gifts of doing that even more today because I had an experience in my childhood where it was completely shut down. Right. And
Mhm.
so that trauma gives me extra appreciation now that I'm moving through that. Right. And I'm extracting the lessons, and I make a lifetime out of, I guess, turning and facing the things that I feared and bringing those lessons to become a part of me and releasing the actual, transmuting the actual trauma of it. So I'm an expanded version of me who loves myself through the courageousness I had to live through that, to go through that, like you did with the accident. I can't imagine what that was like for the years of the medical impact on your body, right? Just what your body's memory has carried, along with all the other layers of your being as a highly sensitive soul. And that's kind of, I think, the message I would imagine in your book that you're bringing forward. That's the work you do with people, that you take all those ingredients that seem really messy in their life sometimes, and it's all blended up. It's in this, like a friend of mine calls it, like the cosmic blender right now. We're all feeling like everything's getting blended. It's noisy and messy.
You called it, I remember one of your podcasts, you called it soup. What did you say?
The
This
seas of
soup.
vibrational soup, right?
Soup.
Yeah.
Yes, vibrational soup. I love that.
A vibrational soup. And we're all in it in our own ways until we recognize that we are swimming in the soup. And then we can take all those ingredients and we can create a whole different recipe. Like you were saying, you love recipes and you don't take just face value, you're adding to it. That's when you become the divine creator. You become the creative hero of your own journey. You're birthing the soul to be the moreness of who we're meant to be, not the smallness that this matrix wants us to believe we are in the illusions here. And I love being a messenger myself. I love talking with other messengers of people who see beyond the illusions and are there to help people kind of walk across the bridges of their entanglements on the other shore to the new shore inside themselves, and that recreation, that new birthing. And yeah, it's
But
so full of hope and joy and I don't know, eager anticipation or curious anticipation versus swimming in the same soup. I think some people are tired of swimming in the soup and they're ready for something else.
and I love also one more metaphor about who, if you've ever been pregnant or anybody that's had a being, a child growing in their womb, knows that they have to sometimes make sacrifices. Maybe they have to give up the alcohol and smoking or whatever the things are because you want a healthy baby. So the same thing applies to being your own midwife or to me being a midwife of the soul, helping people recognize, okay, you are what you consume. And I don't just mean food and beverage. I mean media, screens, other people's energies, too much sports and newscasts and whatever. We have to decide and discern That's not healthy for us. We don't want to be that kind of consumer. We want to consume the light, the higher vibration, as much as we possibly can. And even if that sounds like impossible, yes, it requires discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Just like a 9 month pregnant woman is got to be disciplined in order to bring forth a healthy baby that's going to be viable. So enough about the midwife.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautifully said. And I was just feeling like that's like conscious nourishment, or it's like soul care. It's a whole other level. It's
Yes.
even beyond self-care. But, talking about that pregnancy as metaphor and the midwifing, really being discerning. And that's just, there's a whole level of consciousness of like, what am I ingesting vibrationally? What am I hanging out with vibrationally?
Yes.
Right? What am I giving my
Yes.
vibrational attention to, that I'm participating in what I'm bathing in right now, right? And I think we are in this journey with teachers and healers and therapists and all people in the healing arts who get it, who get that this time is so essential in a fairly toxic planet, right? By design,
Mhm.
the density, they just, the matrix itself wants us to become denser and denser and denser so we don't remember our light. And so we're really thinking about the light in the foods we eat, the light in the things we participate in, how we nourish ourselves. So it is a perfect metaphor for these times, because literally we are birthing ourselves as if we are the baby we are growing, right? It's us. It's us.
Mhm.
It's us.
And the light decalcifying the pineal gland so that you're not blocked and you
Right.
can connect to source.
Right.
And
Right.
and and then that requires some discipline for some people.
Yes,
You
and
know, being
sometimes it
big
helps
busy.
to have a
Yeah.
therapist, a coach, somebody walking with you, especially if you don't have somebody in your life that you can feel safe to explore this and go through this. So I'm going to have you back
Mhm.
because we have more things to talk about, I'm sure. But where can people find you, and where can people find your book?
Okay, the book can be found at either any of the local bookstores. Well, I say local because Barnes and Nobles, it's considered local. Local bookstores you can ask for as well. It was published by Atmosphere Press, so it has its own ISBN number, and bookstores can order it and have it stocked if you request, if a reader requests it. And it can also be accessed through Amazon online. And
Great.
I believe that is the Kindle and the hard or soft cover book. I can give my email, or if you want to put it in the link, for those that just want to connect about the book. Maybe there's some groups, and like we can do an HSP group, that an online learning experience. And if they want to connect just about that, it's my author website is shirefriedman.author at gmail.com. If they want just to schedule or request a therapy session and talk to me one-on-one as a psychotherapist, then that one is my private practice, which is Taproot Integrative Counseling, PLLC. So it is online, and my email for that contact is taproot2020 at gmail.com. So the only thing is that during all of the things like that transpired after or during and after Hurricane Helene
Mm.
in North Carolina, very hard hit where I live in Black Mountain, it was not feasible for me to continue paying for this, my soul birther. It was a wonderful website, but I had to cancel it. I don't know if I will have it bring it back or not, or in what form it will be, a reiteration of that version. But I don't have that anymore. But I think whoever Googles it, it may be there and it may just be deactivated, like the links don't work, but at least they could see it and also ask any questions just through email. Um, and that is how to contact me and interact about the book.
That's fantastic, Shira. Thank you so much for this conversation and for sharing your story and for the courage to bring this book forward and to the steadfast commitment and attunement to your soul's purpose is so palpable. And we need people like you in the healing arts to continue to share this wisdom and to walk with people in the essential times of their own birthing. And so I love that soul birther. That just is so beautiful. Just the energy of that, and yeah, I'd love to do it again. But I want to thank you for joining me today and joining our listeners. And I want to thank our listeners for joining us as well. Hopefully, that's just some of the frequencies and the vibrations of what we brought forward today touches your heart and touches you in your journey. And know that we both continue to bring these messages. That's exactly why we're here. We share what we've learned and what we've grown through, and what we hope inspires others to tap into that taproot, that divine spark inside us that's timeless and eternal and infinite. And it's always, always been with you, always, for forever. So thank you, Shira, and thank you,
Thank
everybody. And we'll see you soon. Hopefully, we'll be back for more conversations. Blessings, everyone.